Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
In the grand intellectual tapestry of the late 19th century, a period characterized by a fervent quest for certainty in the foundations of mathematics, few documents stand as starkly transformative as Giuseppe Peano's 1889 treatise, Arithmetices, Principia, Novo, Methodo, Exposita. This slender volume, a mere pamphlet in physical form, presented a radical vision for mathematical reasoning. It arrived at a moment when the intuitive underpinnings of calculus and analysis, having been rigorously reconstructed by Carl Weierstrass, Georg Cantor, and Richard Dedekind, required an unshakable bedrock. The arithmetization of analysis had successfully reduced the complexities of the continuum to the properties of the real numbers, which in turn were constructed from the rationals, and ultimately from the seemingly self-evident natural numbers. It was at this final, most fundamental level that Peano intervened, offering a work whose significance extended far beyond its titular subject of arithmetic. Through its revolutionary symbolic language and its austere axiomatic framework, the Arithmetices Principia provided the essential toolkit and conceptual blueprint for the logicist program of the ensuing century, fundamentally reshaping the very grammar of mathematical thought. The intellectual landscape into which Peano launched his work was one of both culmination and crisis. The discoveries of non-Euclidean geometries had shattered the Kantian synthesis of intuition and mathematical truth, while Cantor's work on transfinite sets introduced paradoxes that troubled the mathematical conscience. The imperative was to rebuild mathematics upon a foundation of pure logic, free from the perceived unreliability of spatial or temporal intuition. The most immediate predecessor to Peano's project was Richard Dedekind's 1888 essay, Was Sind und was sollen die Zahlen. Dedekind, with philosophical grace and profound insight, had already sought to define the natural numbers through set theoretic concepts, identifying them with specific infinite sets and deriving their properties, including the principle of mathematical induction, which he called the theorem of complete induction. His work was a masterpiece of conceptual analysis, yet Peano's objective was distinct. Where Dedekind's reasoning was presented in elegant prose, relying on the reader's semantic understanding of German, Peano sought a method of exposition, a novo methodo, that would eliminate the ambiguities and hidden assumptions inherent in natural language. His direct intellectual antecedents for this method were the pioneers of symbolic logic, George Boole and Charles Sanders Peirce, whose algebraic treatment of logic suggested the possibility of a pure calculus of reasoning. Peano was also deeply influenced by the formalism of Hermann Grassmann's Worstenanslehre, a work he greatly admired and edited, which demonstrated the power of a symbolic system to generate profound results from abstract definitions. Peano synthesized these streams of thought, perceiving that the foundational security mathematics so desperately sought could be achieved only through a complete formalization, a language in which proofs could be constructed and verified with mechanical precision. The true revolution of the Arithmetices Principia lay in this new method. Peano introduced a system of notation designed to express mathematical propositions with absolute clarity. This was his pasigraphy, a universal language of symbols. He refined and introduced symbols that would become central to modern logic and set theory. The stylized epsilon, derived from the first letter of the Greek word for is, became the standard symbol for set membership, stating that one object is an element of a collection. He introduced a symbol for set inclusion, an inverted C, and another for logical implication. Perhaps most significantly, he developed a system of dots to punctuate logical formulae, resolving the ambiguity of scope that plagued earlier logical notations. This system, which allowed for the complex nesting of logical clauses, was so effective that it was later adopted and extended by Alfred North Whitehead and Bertrand Russell in their own monumental Principia Mathematica. Peano's goal was to render the process of deduction transparent. Every step in a proof would correspond to the application of a single, explicitly stated rule of inference upon axioms or previously established theorems. The validity of a proof would depend solely on its syntactic structure, a concept that anticipated the formalist programs of the 20th century. This was an audacious departure from the prevailing mathematical style, which often relied on phrases like "it is easy to see" or "it follows clearly," rhetorical devices that could conceal logical gaps. With Peano's method, there was nowhere to hide. Every inferential leap was laid bare for scrutiny. Upon this logical scaffolding, Peano constructed his celebrated axiomatization of the natural numbers. The system rested on 9 axioms, which captured the essence of number, succession, and the principle of induction with breathtaking economy. The first axiom establishes that 0 is a number. The next 4 axioms codify the properties of equality, its reflexivity, symmetry, and transitivity, and the principle that if two things are equal, one being a number guarantees the other is as well. The subsequent three axioms define the behavior of the successive function, the operation that generates the next number in the sequence. These state that the successor of any natural number is itself a natural number, that the successive function is injective, meaning distinct numbers have distinct successors, and that 0 is the successor of no number, establishing it as the unique origin point of the sequence. The ninth and final axiom is the most powerful, the principle of mathematical induction. Peano formulated it in set-theoretic terms: if a set contains 0, and if for every number in the set, its successor is also in the set, then that set contains all the natural numbers. From this sparse collection of fundamental truths, Peano demonstrated that the entire edifice of arithmetic, including the definitions and properties of addition, multiplication, and ordering, could be derived with unimpeachable logical rigor. His formulation subtly but decisively shifted the ground from Dedekind's. While Dedekind derived the properties of numbers from a set-theoretic construction, Peano posited them as axioms within a formal system. This axiomatic presentation proved to be more abstract, more general, and ultimately more influential in the development of formal logic and metamathematics. The immediate reception of the Arithmetices Principia was a curious mixture of profound admiration from a select few and utter bewilderment from the wider mathematical community. Many established mathematicians found Peano's dense pages of symbols to be alien and repellent, a form of sterile scholasticism that stripped mathematics of its intuitive beauty. The work's severe aesthetic, a concept so foreign to the geometric sensibilities of the era, initially sent shivers down the spines of those unaccustomed to such abstraction, yet its impact on the right minds was electric. The most famous and consequential convert was young Bertrand Russell, who encountered Peano and his disciples at the 19th International Congress of Philosophy in Paris. Russell arrived at the Congress as a philosopher struggling with the foundations of mathematics, and he left a man with a mission. He was astonished by the intellectual clarity and argumentative power that Peano's method afforded. He wrote that Peano's precision was a revelation, and he immediately dedicated himself to mastering the new symbolic language. This encounter was the primary catalyst for Russell's own work on the philosophy of mathematics. It led directly to his discovery of the paradox that bears his name, a paradox found while attempting to apply Peano's clear methods to the less precise set theory of Cantor. The subsequent collaboration with Whitehead on Principia Mathematica was a direct attempt to carry Peano's project to its ultimate conclusion, the derivation of all of mathematics from a set of purely logical axioms. They adopted Peano's symbolic innovations, including his dot notation for grouping, and built their colossal work upon the conceptual foundation he had laid. The influence of Peano's axiomatic method extended far beyond the logicist school. David Hilbert, the leading figure of a competing foundational philosophy, formalism, recognized the immense power of Peano's approach. Hilbert's program, which aimed to axiomatize every field of mathematics and then prove the consistency of those axioms using finite, combinatorial methods, was a grander articulation of the very spirit that animated the Arithmetices Principia. Peano provided the archetypal example of how a familiar mathematical domain could be completely captured in a formal axiomatic system. Hilbert sought to do the same for geometry, for analysis, and for all of mathematics. The questions Hilbert posed about the consistency, completeness, and decidability of such systems, questions that would define mathematical logic for the next half-century, were only possible to formulate in the wake of Peano's successful formalization of arithmetic. Peano's work thus became a shared legacy, an essential piece of the foundational puzzle for both logicists, who saw arithmetic as a part of logic, and formalists, who saw it as a meaningless game played with symbols according to strict rules. The quiet rigor of the Arithmetices Principia rippled through the decades, informing the development of computability theory and the theoretical underpinnings of computer science. The very idea of formal language with a precise syntax and semantics, an idea that Peano made concrete from mathematics, are the core principle behind every programming language. In conclusion, Giuseppe Peano's Arithmetices Principia, novo methodo exposita represents a watershed moment in the history of human thought. Its legacy is twofold. It provided the definitive, concise set of axioms for the natural numbers, a formulation so elegant and powerful that it continues to be taught as the standard foundation for arithmetic. Yet, its more profound contribution, the one announced by its title, was its new method. Peano offered mathematics a language of pure form, a symbolic calculus of reason capable of exorcising the ghosts of intuition and ambiguity. This persigraphy became the lingua franca for the great foundational debates of the early 20th century and established the methodological paradigm for much of modern mathematics. While the grand logicist project of Russell and Whitehead faltered in the face of Gödel's incompleteness theorems, The conceptual tools and the standard of rigor pioneered by Peano endured. He sculpted the bedrock of formal reasoning upon which subsequent titans, from Russell and Hilbert to Gödel and Turing, would erect their own monumental cathedrals of thought, forever changing our understanding of what it means to prove a mathematical truth.
We really appreciate you tuning in to this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.